is we're going to do some repeated readings. That means we're going to read a poem 1, 2, maybe even 3 times. And after we do that, we're going to be able to understand the poem in a much better way than we would normally be able to if we only read it one time. So our purpose statement says, through repeated readings, I will be able to read the poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. I will also be able to identify parts of the poem and explain how the parts blend together to form a story. So we've been talking about poetry for the past few weeks. Who remembers the type of poem we've been talking about the most? It's a certain type of poetry. What was that called? The type of poetry we've been talking about the most. Think back. Trevor, what was that called? Rhyming poems. Now we know rhyming poems. We know a poem rhymes because the ending of each line rhymes with the next. Does anybody remember, and you have your Halloween poems in front of you, does anybody remember, I'm noticing that this poem is chunked into 4 small parts. Does anybody remember what those are called? Oh, I love seeing these hands. What are those 4 small parts called? Megan, what are they called? A stanza. And you know, a stanza is like a sequence. It's like a paragraph in normal writing. So it's telling us what happens first, next, then last. I have a couple other questions for you before we go on. Who is the person that tells the story? Oh, you know what that's called? It's the same in a poem as it is in a normal novel that we're reading usually, or a play. I think there is a, Beth, what do you think?
Author?
An author. Another word for an author. And this is maybe a word that might be a little more unfamiliar to us. Landon?
A narrator?
A narrator. And I want to write that word here. Because a narrator is a person who is telling the story. And sometimes in a poem, it doesn't come out, it's not a right there question. We have to use our thinking skills to figure out who the narrator in the story is. Nadia.
I figured out that this is a rhyming.
It is a rhyming poem. So what I'm going to do, kiddos, I'm going to read this poem to you. I'm going to walk through all the steps I do to read it 1, 2, maybe even 3 times, and answer some questions about the stanzas, about the narrators, about the setting. So hands down, can you follow along with me as I read to you? You can track with a finger, you can track with a pencil. It's right there in front of you. It says, pumpkins big and pumpkins round, pumpkins seen all over town. Scary masks and bats up high, with twinkling stars in the sky. It must be Halloween. I'm even going to put 1 for stanza 1. Kids are yelling trick or treat. Joey's costume is so neat. Many leaves are falling crisp and red. Susie wears a witch's hat upon her head. It must be Halloween. The wind is blowing with a chill as I climb back up the hill. So much candy in my bag, it hits the ground and starts to drag. It must be Halloween. 8 o'clock and most lights out. Time for home, but some kids pout. They had fun, this we know, from the smiles that they show. It must be Halloween. It must have been Halloween. Thanks for correcting me. I noticed 4 stanzas. When I'm talking about the type of poem, some of you already jumped right to this. You recognize a pattern, probably in stanza number 1. What type of poem was this? I would categorize this poem as what, Saya? A rhyming poem, because I know round, town, high, sky. Do you notice those?
Yeah.
What I'm wondering if you can you guys help me find the rhyming words here? You don't need to do this on your own. You can just help me with this. Treat and
Meat.
red and
Head.
Halloween. Does that rhyme with anything?
No.
Chill and
Pill.
bag and
Drag.
out and
Out.
know and show. Question for you. I noticed one more thing. It must be Halloween. It must be Halloween. It must be Halloween. It must have been Halloween. I'm thinking in my head, why did the author choose to repeat that multiple times? I think in my brain, usually when an author repeats something 1, 2, 3, 4 times, that has to be a clue saying what? What would you infer? A to B, way in the back, what would you say? Can you say that a little louder? I want everybody to hear it. Hayden.
They want you to know that it's Halloween, whatever the topic is.
Exactly. They want you to know what the topic is. This author made it very clear that it was Halloween. We really couldn't miss it because she said it 1, 2, 3, 4 times.
Because it says Judy.
It does say Judy, so I know the author was written by a female. Now, part of reading poetry is reading it with expression and reading it having fun. Let's practice. We've read it one time. If we're doing a repeated reading, it means we need to read it more than one time so we can understand. So I'm wondering if you can read it along with me now. Let's start at stanza 1. Charlie, let's go on the count of 3. We're going to read it. We're going to try to read it with expression. Sawyer, I don't see a poem. Thanks. 1, 2, 3. Pumpkins big and pumpkins round. Pumpkins seen all over town. Scary masks and bats up high with twinkling stars in the sky. It must be Halloween. I take a pause in between stanzas and I go, kids are yelling trick or treat. Joey's costume is so neat. Many leaves are falling crisp and red. Susie wears a witch's hat upon her head. It must be Halloween. Take a deep breath. The wind is blowing with a chill as I climb back up the hill. So much candy in my bag, it hits the ground and starts to drag. It must be Halloween. Deep breath. 8 o'clock and most lights out. Time for home, but some kids out. They had fun, this we know, from the smiles that they show. It must have been Halloween. Ooh. It must be Halloween. It must have been Halloween. Have been. We've been talking about this verb. Have been. That's a clue for what, Landon? It was in the past. So this might be the setting of the story may have changed and now they're kind of reflecting or they're looking back on Halloween. Very good. We've read this 2 times. So we've read it repeatedly. Now I'm going to show you how I would answer some questions about this. So you, my friends, get to watch and observe. Did someone have a hand up that I missed? No. Nadia, what do you think?
When it says at the bottom it must be Halloween, it just really says that it was already Halloween.
Yes. Halloween has passed. Yes, very good. Buck, what do you think?
When you said that, it was really weird to see that it was Halloween. Even the title was called Halloween.
Even the title. So really, do you think we could have missed that point?
No.
No. And that's the point. The author, when they want you to realize something is important, they will include it multiple times, so you do not miss it. Okay, 3rd graders, here are some questions. These questions up here are going to be questions that you are going to do on your own here in a few minutes. So right now, all I want you to do is watch. Watch how I answer these questions so we are able to do this in just a moment together. So can you put your poems down? Nothing in your hands. Show me there's nothing in your hands. Sawyer, your eyes need to be up here on me. Thanks. Hayden, turn around. The first question says, who is the narrator? The narrator. I know that narrator means who is telling the story. I have to think, is a character telling the story? Is an author telling the story? What do we think here? I think based on what I'm hearing, I think it is the author. So who is the narrator? I put the narrator is it, I'm just going to put Julie to keep it short.
Judy.
Oh, Judy, thank you. Judy. What makes you think that? Now I have to prove it. Oh my goodness. That's why we read carefully, Mrs. Lindgray. What makes you think this? I think this because I'm thinking it's Judy because it doesn't use any of the words I, right? It doesn't say like I. It says kids are yelling trick or treat, not I was yelling trick or treat. Joey's costume is so neat. I'm thinking as a narrator. What?
It says, as I climb back up the hill.
As I climb back up.
Yeah, and
Well, I think the narrator is telling this story because it didn't
Well, I
mention
think-
any of the characters. What's I think?
yeah, I did.
Well, it says Joey. It does say Joey.
That's it.
It says Joey, and it does mention Susie. So it does. But I'm not thinking, I know Joey isn't telling the story because it uses Joey's name, Hayden. Okay? So I think
It could be a
Judy is telling the story because she uses other characters' names. Now, it says, in stanza 1, where is the narrator? So I'm going to go focus on stanza 1. This is where you have to know how to locate stanzas. In stanza 1, pumpkins big and pumpkins round, pumpkins seen all over town, scary masks and bats up high, with twinkling stars in the sky, it must be Halloween. Where do you think the narrator is? I think I got a great clue. Pumpkins big and pumpkins round, pumpkins seen all over town. So I think Judy is in a town. I bet Judy is in a town. Darn it. Judy is in a town with Halloween decorations. Can I say that?
This is the right Judy right there. Or Helen Friends.
What makes you think this? I'm going to put direct text evidence. Pumpkins seen all over town. I'm going to put that. Pumpkins seen all over town. In stanza 2, how is the setting further described? So moving down. Kids are yelling trick or treat. Joey's costume is so neat. Many leaves are falling crisp and red. Susie wears a witch's hat upon her head. It must be Halloween. How is she talking about the setting here? I think what she's saying is here, kids are yelling trick or treat. Think you guys are kids. Ashton, when do you yell trick or treat? When you're doing what? I think something has changed here. It makes me think, because it's talking about costume, witch's hat on her head. It makes me think they're doing something different. Ava Grace? Yeah. Now the kids are trick-or-treating, don't you think? They're trick-or-treating. Hayden, out of your desk.
She said, I climbed up the hill. My bag is full of candy.
Oh, so much candy in my bag. So perhaps she is trick-or-treating, AJ. That's a great point. In stanza 3, describes the sounds the narrator hears. Stanza 3, let's see, let's read it. Let's